I really like it. Firstly, the writer has said that title, I Tonya, kind of implies a number of things. I Claudius on the one hand, but also I Tonya Harding agree to tell. So it's it's referring back to, but it's also that idea of somebody telling stories. And so much of it is about stories. It's about contradictory narratives. I mean, stylistically, the film reminds me of a lot of things. It's kind of like To Die For meets Blades of Glory with the zing of American Hustle and the domestic violence of something like Raging Bull. And what's really clever about it is that the conflicting narrative device works really well. That it says at the beginning, this is based on the irony-free, totally true, totally contradictory interviews with these people, and then during the course of the drama, through a number of different devices, whether it's to-camera interviews, sort of faux interviews that you referred to, or whether it's breaking the fourth wall for characters to look aside and say, "This didn't happen. This isn't how it worked out." It reminded me of 24-Hour Party People, actually, the Michael Winterbottom film, with which it does have some stylistic things in common, because they're both to do with something which became a sort of pop narrative, a folklore narrative, that's all to do with conflicting versions of a story which kind of becomes larger than life, and yet at the centre of it has a kernel of truth. I think that the cellular jukebox soundtrack is particularly well chosen and manages these, on the one hand, going from Cliff Richard, Devil Woman, through, Bee Gees and ZZ Top, and I think it's put together in a really nice way that locates the action at different times, but also sort of serves as a kind of ironic Greek commentary on the action. Once you get out onto the ice, it was interesting that you were talking there to Margot Robbie, and she said, as Tonya, I'm on the ice, I'm at home, but as Margot Robbie, I'm worried about falling over and breaking something and holding up the production. I love that idea that you're not worried about breaking something, you're worried about the fact that that's going to then hold up the production.
Yeah, it's the producer speaking.
But what's terrific about those skating sequences, which obviously, use body doubles and CG and that sort of stuff, particularly for triple axel, because triple axel really hard, is that they have... They're shot almost like an action movie. I mean, they are closer to the kind of car chases of Baby Driver than they are to any sort of ice ballet. And of course, every time her Tonya goes out on the ice, the person it reminded me most of is James Caan as Jonathan E. in Rollerball. I mean, she goes out there looking like somebody that's, about to have a fight. And when she was talking about the physicality of the performance, so much of that is absolutely the centre of the character. It's not just what the characters say. It's not the fact that the characters turn away and break the fourth wall and do that. It's the way in which they stand. It's that strange mixture of, on the one hand, leading with your chin, and on the other hand, looking like you're waiting to be knocked back. There's a point when her mother, brilliantly played by Alison Janney, who of course was at the BAFTAs, and does such a great job. And there's a scene in which we see Alison Janney's character hitting her and throwing things at her, and throwing knives at her, and it's terrifying. And it cuts to an interview which is, "Oh please, what family doesn't have its ups and downs?" And that's the kind of the tone of the film. But so much of it is to do with that physicality at the centre. It's not just when she's talking, it's the way she stands, it's the way she looks, it's the way she looks from under her fringe. It's the way that during the course of the film, as her hairstyles change and her stance change and her clothes change, what you see is still that thing about leading with the chin, but looking like you're kind of expecting to be struck. And that's very important, because the film is doing that difficult thing of balancing a very tough subject. It is a film about domestic abuse, about domestic violence, absolutely. And yet it has this kind of smart, snappy comic tone. And you asked, how do you balance that tone? And she said in their answer, there's many ways of doing it wrong and only one way of doing it right. And I was really impressed, and I've seen this film a couple of times now, by how well they do manage to keep that balance. Part of it is to do with the script, because the screenplay walks a kind of blade, no pun intended, between the dark and the light, and they found a way of, in some of the more extreme moments of violence, of turning towards the audience and therefore making it somehow removed, as if what we're seeing is a commentary on what we're seeing at the same time. We see the same event from different circumstances, with the characters saying, "This didn't happen. That's not how it worked out. That's your version of the story. That's not my version of the story." And I think, therefore, what you get is a kind of a kaleidoscopic narrative, which has got a really smart, sharp sensibility, remembers that at the centre of it is somebody who has endured abuse, and therefore as she quite rightly said, it may not be telling her version of the story, but your sympathies are naturally with her character. But none of it would work if you didn't have a whirling dervish of a performance at the centre of it, somebody who could literally embody all those contradictions. And I thought Margot Robbie did that. I don't know what the skating points is, but perfect score from me for her performance in that film.